Golden Knights, and Sharks also among the teams in action. Listen to NBC Sports Radio on your local station, online, or the free mobile app. This is Maria Marino, NBC Sports Radio, and NBCSportsRadio.com.
Well, there you are. Hello, Tri-Cities. This is Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-Cities sports fans. The name of the program, Tri-Cities Sports Now, on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, where we own the Tri-Cities. And I am currently, on today's show, the big news, I guess, right now, although it is not necessarily a Tri-Cities story, is the NFL. Titans going to make the playoffs? Who's going to be the number one seed in the AFC? Well, the Patriots. But what about this James Harrison situation? Could the Carolina Panthers actually get a bye in the playoffs? It is possible. For it to happen, the New Orleans Saints have to lose to Tampa Bay, which, 11-4 losing to 4-11 probably isn't going to happen. But on any given Sunday, and I can actually remember years ago, Tampa Bay, a similarly bad Tampa Bay team. This is when the Bucs were losing 10 games every year. They were dropping down to, they beat the Broncos, and the Broncos had Elway and such. And that was in Denver. That was a big game. That was a big upset. So, but you know what I want to talk about today? As much as I know we have a viewer on our Facebook Live, if you are not catching the show live, tune to 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities and watch us on Facebook Live any time of day. See, I'm going to tell you what's going on locally is basketball. Mentioned this in the promos. And it's really my belief that this time of year, high school basketball covered way, way, way too much. Outside of maybe the playoffs, the holiday tournament time is the celebration of high school basketball, certainly in this area because of all the holiday tournaments. And I just got to tell you, playing wall-to-wall basketball games at a lower level, with local teams being trounced by high schools that we've never heard of, from out of the area, from the Bahamas, for crying out loud. But we are assured by tournament organizers, oh, they're good. Just doesn't do it for me. It is my least favorite. I don't know. I've never covered a, I'm trying, I was about to say, I've never covered animal fighting, so not that I want to. Maybe I'd find that more distasteful. But I really don't like high school basketball tournaments. That doesn't mean that I don't like the slate of basketball that's going on today. Hold on to that. Most high school basketball tournaments, you know what? They're poorly run. They really are. And from what I've found, they're also somewhat disingenuous, somewhat dishonest. One year I covered a major local tournament. I'm not going to mention what it is. I just don't want to give it the free publicity. And the drawing card of the tournament was injured. It's actually the son of a basketball player who one could argue was a local legend. Son of a former number one pick in the NBA. Had a local tie. He was going to come and play in one of these major tournaments, and either he was hurt or he was sick. They didn't make the announcement. Team lost by 30 points without him. That wasn't a surprise. But the idea was, hey, if we make the announcement in the media, this guy isn't going to play, it's going to kill the walk-up sales, right? That's what these tournaments, these big tournaments, oftentimes do. Organizers said one local high school basketball tournament was a sellout on Tuesday. But I could see in the highlights empty seats even when the local teams played. Who couldn't? What was the official attendance count? Never released. Instead, what we get instead, and I hate this, and sports writers actually pick up on this, and it's a nothing statement. They say the fire marshal showed up. More on that in just a bit. What this boils down to, there's a situation where fans were actually had tickets they couldn't get into a local basketball tournament. And that just boils down to the tournament officials, the people running it, didn't understand the basic concepts of crowd management. They were even quoted as saying in the media that they should have allowed fans with tournament passes in to the ball games first. You think? Fans literally waiting in the cold, freezing for hours. This is just a bad scene. And it's not like it's one of those situations where, you've got the crazy Kentucky basketball fan who brings his RV outside a Rupp Arena 17 days before, Midnight Madness or something. He's going to camp out, so he's the first guy in Midnight Madness. No, it's not like that. It's a guy wanted to go could not get in. The event just wasn't managed properly. And instead of an attendance count, we always get this announcement, and it happens every year. The fire marshal showed up to the tournaments. Well, I'm glad the fire marshal is doing his job. I do think the fire marshal in Johnson City, more than a decade ago, but overzealous, when they essentially destroyed the mini dome. But half of that's on ETSU as well for never doing the amenities needed, and they're very basic, to the mini dome so that ETSU could once again play in a venue that could seat 12,000 seats. But you see, selling those 12,000 seats is very difficult. They've only done it a few times. So they look at this as a blessing in disguise, even though it's something of a marketing and nightmare. Anyway, to my knowledge, I am the only member of the Tri-Cities sports media who ever got an attendance count at one of these high school tournaments. And it was 5,000 some, which would have been enough to almost sell out the arena that day. I'll give you that. But the thing that you got to remember is that that's not for one game. What you have to remember is that is for the entire slate of games of the day. The fire marshal showed up. That's saying there were 5,000 people that attended. I got the one day, but there are 8-10 games that are being played. So, yeah, you had local teams were out there, maybe a couple thousand. But then all the fans went home, and when you had, Louisiana playing against Alabama, there were 50 people in the stands. It all counted in the overall attendance figure. This is why it's so disingenuous. This is why the fire marshal showed up. I can't stand it. I literally can't stand it. And I mean, I can go on, but, people get on me for being negative, and so I'll take the Tony Bruno, it's not my style to be critical mindset here. But I do think it needs to be said. Because I just, all these high school basketball tournaments, even when I did get that attendance count of 5,000, well, that's not bad. 5,000 for high school basketball? Throughout the day? I mean, even you're keeping the gates open for 10 hours? I mean, that's not bad. But I was met with contempt when I asked for the attendance figure. Why do you need that? We always run this tournament so well. Well, it's part of the box score. I mean, why are you suppressing information? And the other thing I hate about high school basketball tournament, media interaction with the teams historically has been discouraged. And I've got to comment on this because this hurts the industry, both the tournament and the media at large. I've literally, in high school basketball tournaments, waited outside a locker room until the second quarter of the next game to get a quote or to talk to the coach or a player afterwards. And folks, that is unethical. That is a coach dodging the media. And I remember finally, it's the second quarter? They're into the second quarter of the next game? Finally, I open up the door, stick my head up. Excuse me, we got writers out here. We need to talk to the coach. And the coach then goes to the tournament official and says, we understood you went into the locker room and all that. You know what? You're allowed to in most elements of basketball. I mean, the NBA, there's no problem with that. And I tell him, well, it was the second quarter. It had been a half hour after the ball game. They were ducking the media. We need quotes. I stuck my head into the locker room. I didn't do anything wrong. Well, maybe we ought to have a media room after the game. You think? And the thing is, these tournaments are supposed to showcase the talent on these teams, the college recruiters and whatnot. Now, most of this is done through the AAU tournaments and all that. Let's face facts. I mean, very few people are going to be signed out of a high school basketball tournament over the Christmas holiday, okay? In fact, there are some recruiters that you'll find there, but not as many as you used to have. They're all at the AAU tournaments and all that. That's where football guys are recruited off what they do in the games. That's about the only sport that guys are recruited off what they do in high school games. Otherwise, it's, traveling tournaments in baseball. It's, AAU tournaments in basketball. And the thing is that media attention is extremely important for those players. I mean, you've got a sophomore, somebody maybe who's just about ready to go to the camps. He scores 30 in one of these games. Well, yeah, you do want to talk to him and find out about his maturity. And I mean, does he say something that's witty or poignant or whatever to the media? What does his coach say about him? Oh, he's 6'4" and he's still growing. I'll bet as a senior he'll be 6'8". See that in the media? Maybe a coach looks at that. Maybe starts paying attention. Maybe an AAU coach says, there's a guy I might want to ask to be on my team, try out. So for these reasons, I don't have much time for a high school basketball tournament. You know what I do have time for? ETSU and Tusculum. That's the game of the day. And I really like what's going on there. Because there was a time where ETSU was afraid to schedule home games in the week of the Christmas holiday because of the high school tournaments. No more. In fact, what I'd like to see is them make the amendments to the mini dome and maybe have a Christmas tournament of themselves. You don't understand. If the mini dome was to full capacity, it'd be one of the top 60 arenas in college basketball in terms of what it can hold. ETSU has gone to Florida for Christmas tournaments, and they've gone to Hawaii for Christmas tournament, and nobody goes to those games. But you know what they do? If you could bring in to Johnson City, you want to talk about economic impact? Legitimate, big-name college programs into a tournament, into an ETSU tournament, let's just say, and showcase the program and the facilities? That would be huge. That would be 100 times bigger than these high school tournaments. Minimum. You'd be bringing in far more money. But today, we don't have that, but we do have the showcase of the area's hoop talent. It's focused rightfully on Tusculum at ETSU. And it's a game that does deserve a lot of attention, even with the almost certainty of a Buccaneers victory. And we'll be breaking this down a little bit later on in the show. But folks, you're going to say, Marky, it's a tune-up game. Yeah, every D1 team plays them. But for some reason, this is only the second time since 1957 the Pioneers and Bucks have played on the hardwood, at least the men. That means only the second time since East Tennessee State was the third time since a member of the NCAA. I think their first year in the NCAAs, they also played in the Ohio Valley Conference. They also played Tusculum. So for almost a half century now, ETSU, and this was poor marketing by ETSU in my opinion, because for almost a half century they disdained playing the smaller colleges of the immediate Tri-Cities area. There were games against Carson Newman, UVA Wise, Mars Hill, some of those guys. And that is, the metropolitan area of the Tri-Cities. I would argue that. That's the TV market. But Tusculum and Milligan were forgotten as opponents after 1960, and 57-58 in the case of the Pioneers, until Murray Bartow became the coach of the Bucks. Now, avoiding those local schools for tune-up games, that just wasn't healthy. For the Pioneers and Buffaloes, it was a bold try. Let's see what we can do against the best, a D1 team. But it's also a healthy check for the athletic departments, helps fund Tusculum, Milligan, the local colleges of the area. They wouldn't otherwise receive it. And it's the most exposure these teams are going to receive all season long, even if they go and play in D2 tournaments or something. For ETSU, it's a chance to reinforce the program's King of the Hill status. But it's also an opportunity to create local exposure in the immediate outlying communities of Johnson City. Right now, ETSU is the biggest story in Greenville, Tennessee. Not bad. Now, by the way, I've looked it up. Tusculum hasn't beaten East Tennessee State since 1951. Okay? Put that in perspective. That's before Johnson City's Ernie Bowman got his driver's license. He's now 82. You don't know who Ernie Bowman is? Let me tell you. He played basketball in the mid-50s for ETSU, led him to the NAIA tournament. That was a big deal at the time. It's always, I think it still is, in Kansas City. They won a tournament game out there. Those were the ETSC teams under Madison Brooks that allowed the program to eventually become Division I, enter the Ohio Valley Conference, and really set apart ETSC from the Tusculums and the Milligans and so on. I don't know, maybe that's a reason why they didn't want to play them anymore. Do the Eustace Tilley thing, put their nose in the air. We're ETSU. No more. I mean, we know what the status is of this. By the way, Bowman also went on to be a utility infielder for the San Francisco Giants, so he was a pretty good athlete. Played at Science Hill. There is a fun historical note on the Tusculum ETSU series. Bucks once played 4 games during a 3-year period because of World War II. That's all they played, 4 basketball games during a 3-year period. Actually, 2 during a 3-year period, but they played 2 games in 1944-45. The next season, they played the first 2 games against Tusculum. All 4 of these games in a 3-year period for ETSC at the time, Tusculum. They had just a decade being called the Buccaneers. They had been the teachers before then. It's fun basketball history. You know what else is kind of interesting to note? There's that memorable 1944-45 team that only played 2 games, both against the Pioneers, and they lost them both to Tusculum. Shows you how far East Tennessee State's gone over the years. They only scored 37 points in both of those games. So Gene McMurray, who was the second longest tenured coach in East Tennessee State history, he had, I think, a skeleton team back then, I would imagine. But I would imagine 37 games and 2 games against Tusculum, the only 2 ETSC plays in 44-45. I'm going to bet ETSU scores more than 37 points in the first half against Tusculum tonight. You know what else there's a nice thing to see in this ball game? Dylan Repper. He's from Johnson City. He's only gotten to 3 games. He'll play in a ball game, I'm sure, when it's garbage time. Unfortunately, that's what he'll get, garbage time. He's probably going to be the only local player, too, to get on the court. Patrick Good from David Crockett, of course, has to sit out this year after transferring from Appalachian. He's got a teammate on Tusculum from the old David Crockett days in Jonesboro. That's Dustin Day. And Tusculum also has a few other local players on their roster. Ethan Harmon from North Green. Dylan DeBusk from Greenville. Connor Green from Tennessee High in Bristol, Tennessee. But none of them have played this year. Some are being redshirted, so I doubt they'll get on the court. And you know what? That is a commentary on what the area's high school basketball talent really is. Area's never produced an NBA player, folks. I mean, ETSU has, but one was from Culpeper, Virginia, and the ABAer was from Alexandria, Virginia. So that's yet another reason why you're better off watching ETSU against Tusculum tonight. Hey, I'm Marky Billson. I've got a lot to say on every subject, you know that. And when we come back, I've got a note. Remember Cade Mays? He was receiving profanity from Tennessee fans for signing with Georgia. Now he's returning in kind. I'll tell you about that when we return on Tri-City Sports Now.
Crabtree Buick GMC. It means trust. For over 60 years, Crabtree has been selling quality vehicles in the Tri-City.